Gym intimidation is real, especially when it's like a school of men, basically. How do you help women like get past that?
The gym is not a masculine place. There's a lot of men there, but like it's not designed for them. It's not built for them. It's not about them. 90% of the stuff that I see on social media like pisses me off. And it's geared towards like creating insecurity and poor relationship with food and exercise.
Why do you think more women are still training to be smaller instead of stronger? Jess, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the Broads podcast.
Thank you for having me. I've been excited about this one.
I know, we were just talking about this beforehand, but you had a viral video was talking about the meatball sub sandwich. Can you walk us through
Yes.
what that video is and why everyone needs to hear it?
Yeah, so I don't know why there's this like universal rule, but like the content that you just think of that is so dumb is the content that everybody ends up seeing, right? Like that you did not plan, nothing happened. So it's really just me eating a meatball sub and talking in an obnoxious like New Jersey accent, which I love that people thought that was my real voice for a while. Like they started watching my other stuff and I would get comments like, I wish this is not your real voice. What happened in the meatball sub voice? So but yeah, that one really took off for absolutely no reason. And it's really just me eating a sandwich if I'm really gonna dive into it. But
Well, no, I mean the whole like background of it is just you were just like, oh, basically like we're not supposed to eat this, and then you're like, F it, like, yeah, I'm going to.
yeah, it was like 10 foods that have like almost 0 calories. And then I was like, just kidding. That would never be on my Instagram. Please don't come to my profile for that.
Exactly. So let's
Yes.
start there. Why is that so important?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of us, especially as women, like, and women in the industry, especially because there's this extra pressure, but this journey, at least for me, has been crazy in terms of my relationship with my body and food and exercise. And, I didn't really know where I fit in the industry for a long time. And then I just got to this place where I was like, half of the stuff, not even half, 90% of the stuff that I see on social media like pisses me off. And it's geared towards like creating insecurity and, a poor relationship with food and exercise. So since I've really become confident, like that is my message and that's what I'm passionate about, promoting that type of content, some more serious, some more obviously silly, has been something that's been just kind of a mainstay in my brand and my message. So I'm super passionate about that. And I'm sure as like a woman who does this, like you can really relate.
Yeah. You had mentioned that like for a long time you were kind of going down that route and there was just like a moment where you're like, I need to stop going like and doing this and I need to stand up and be stronger and like stop falling into these traps. What was that moment or did it happen over time?
I think it happened over time, but there's definitely a moment of freedom that you experience when you look back and you remember kind of where you were and how wrapped up you were in these things. I think that as I got more educated, and that's why I always say to my clients, like education around nutrition and exercise is all the empowerment that you need to, make the right decisions. And as I started to get more educated and I spent more time around like high performing athletes, that was a really big perspective shift for me, because I would watch these like incredible female athletes all day, every day, and I would hear them like tearing their bodies apart and talking about some of like the diety things that they did, and I'm like, this shit is so stupid. Like,
Yeah.
it really frustrated me because I'm like, I look at these girls, these young women, and I'm like, they're so badass and they're so capable and they're so strong. And then I'm like, why don't I feel that way about myself? Like, why have I let all of this external dialogue impact the way that I feel about myself, my body, and food? And so, you know, being around it and having that representation of it that was kind of out of my head, helped me realize like how much time and energy all of us are wasting just tearing ourselves apart and worrying about things that don't actually matter, and how a lot of that energy can just be put into like being excited to move your body and enjoying food and understanding how to fuel. And that's brought me more, I would say, comfort, but also I look better now than I did when I was worrying about all of that stupid stuff anyways. So
Yeah. Yeah. So some of these athletes that you're talking about, like, are you working with them now within like specifically their mindset around body image and how they show up for themselves?
So a lot of the athlete context that I'm talking about is when I was coaching in a collegiate setting. So that's when just like all day, every day, I was surrounded by athletes. Now I work with some like youth athletes, and I'm really fortunate to have some of my collegiate athletes that I worked with at one point who graduated now actually work with me online as well. Um, but it has been really cool to kind of witness that journey and witness that narrative shift within them as well. We are everything that we consume. So when these people stop hearing like, oh, like I have fat on my legs and I have fat on my arms, and they hear like you're an athlete, like you are allowed to have muscles, you're allowed to have body fat, like your body does incredible things, you look amazing, you're healthy, you have the ability to move every day. You really kind of watch them settle into a more comfortable version of themselves, because also that time of life is just hard for everybody, but especially for women, like when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, trying to figure everything out. So I love kind of watching that shift. And even in high schoolers that I coach as well, it's really, really great to challenge the idea that like you are what your body looks like, you are your body fat percentage, like that is all that matters. So that's something that I'm really intentional about doing and about speaking about when I'm around athletes. So
Why do you think more women are still training to be smaller instead of stronger, just in general?
I don't know. I think it is a combination of, I mean, I think everything kind of works in trends, and right now we're really seeing that resurgence of skinny talk coming back, and just like the early 2000s, like the skinny Victoria's Secret model like type of content. Um, I think that when I think people don't know what they really want. Like when I wanted to be really skinny, I don't even think I wanted that. I just wanted it because everybody else told me that I wanted it. And then I started to build muscle, and I started to kind of recomp my body, and I started to push myself in the gym. And for me, it was a gradual process, but it was very abrupt of like, I don't ever want to be as thin as possible. Like that's not something that naturally I would want, but
Hmm.
I just been surrounded by it. So like everybody else, I was dieting in high school and I was dieting in college and, doing all of that. So, I mean, I don't know. I think people just think that that's what they want. And I hope, I love your content too. And I hope that through us kind of like sharing the other side of that equation, like, hey, there are other things to be besides tiny,
Yeah.
that like women get excited about doing other things with their bodies. So
I think the other word that I'm sure you hear a lot that just like irks me so much, but I also understand it is the word toning.
yeah,
And most women just have, I would say it's very subjective, right? Even the word bulky is like, because it could look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or it could look like me or you, like
yeah,
whatever that means to that person.
yeah.
But I think that the word toning irks me so much because it feels just like a feminine version of just like body recomposition. Like we've been mentioning, like gaining muscle and losing fat to like look have a certain look. What do you feel like is like the lie that women are told when they talk about the word toning?
I think this one is funny to me because I think that you can appear toned, but toning is something that is made up, right? And it's a
Yeah.
verb, like you said, that just caters to women, of the idea that there's something smaller that we can do than body recomp. There's something more feminine that we can do, right? And that is toning, right? We had tone the muscles. Like you can have a toned appearance. That's a thing. Athletes, when you look at an athlete, you say, oh, they're lean or they're toned. Like that's when you can see muscle definition. And that's when there's, a low enough level of body fat. And that again is subjective. But like the word toning is just so pandering because you never hear it used with like men.
Hmm.
Like, hey guys, I'm taking 60 guys who want to tone up and get, like you never hear that, but it's always with women. It's like this dialed down, smaller version of like building muscle, losing body fat. Um, and honestly, just that, I mean, rhetoric and dialogue is so important, but just that word itself, actually makes people feel differently about what body recomp is, right? Because then you say building muscle and women get scared. And I'm like, well, you just said toning. So it's like it's crazy how that has informed the perception of like what women want, the word itself, right?
Yeah. That's so true. When you say that, you're like, it's literally the same thing, like building
Mm-hmm.
muscle, but that can be like scary. And toning is like, that's something that I want. Like, I'm sure women that hear this will be like, yes, that's what I want. And that's literally what we're doing when we're building muscle. And so I think there's still that like fear of bulk, right?
Yes.
We both post stuff like this all the time,
Yeah.
but like this fear of bulking is still holding women back. And like, why? Why do you think that is?
Um, I don't I don't know necessarily. And I think that there's comfort, like there's discomfort in the unknown, right? So people already, as you know, as a coach, they don't want to make change, right? They don't want to get out of their comfort zone. Being uncomfortable is not something that a lot of people seek out, right? Which like I can't relate, as we talked about before the call. I like want to be as uncomfortable as possible all the time. But um it's uncomfortable for them, and so they look for ways to justify their inaction, right? And they're like, well, I don't want to get too bulky, so like I'm not going to strength train, which like strength training is uncomfortable and it is intimidating and there is a learning curve, and I was once the idiot in the gym who had no idea what they were doing, and it wasn't fun, and I'm not going to sugarcoat any of that, right? But that's kind of like saying, well, I'm not going to like go to a cooking class with my boyfriend because like I don't want to be Gordon Ramsay. Like it's a crazy thing to say. And it's also just like offensive to people who work really hard. Like if you figure out the secret to getting bulky overnight, I would love to hear it because I've been working at it for the last 10 years, right? So I think some of it is just fear of the unknown and some of it is just justification of inaction because it's something that's unfamiliar and they're like, well, I'd rather do the familiar even though it's not, it's not my desired end result.
That's like a really good way to put it too. It's like it's very uncomfortable. And because they, don't want to feel that uncomfortable or that like scariness, they almost like are putting a different excuse on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting way to put it.
Well, because
Um,
it takes like the onus off of them and like puts
yeah,
it onto the thing, right? It's not like, well, I don't want to get up out of bed and go to the gym. It's like, oh, well, the gym is going to make me bulky. So like that's the gym's fault. So like I'm not going to do, you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like a really good way of like shifting blame of an action like from yourself and being like, oh, it's the activity. Like I can't do it because it's going to make me this way.
Do you think that there's definitely still some narrative of men like a certain look and that could potentially like skew their opinion as well?
Yes, I think there is that narrative. Um, and I think that there will always be a subset of women that do everything like for the male gaze. And I'm not saying that's any type of way, but like for me, if I had a man tell me that I was too muscular for him, I'd be like, that's the most emasculating thing you could have said. You know what I mean? Like, that's simply not my problem. Um, I think some of it is like male gaze stuff, and I also think a lot of men are really vocal on social media. Like I saw this video the other day, and it was like, "Do you want a cardio bunny or like
Yeah.
a lifter?" And they were like, "Oh, like cardio bunny. Like I don't want like a manly." And it's just like, I mean, I don't. I have a different perception because I don't associate with men who would ever say things that stupid. But I to each their own, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. And then it was cardio bunny or muscle mommy. And everyone's
Oh
like,
yeah, that's
cardio
right.
bunny. And they're all like,
Yeah.
because I don't want them to feel bigger or stronger than me. And I feel the same way. If any man is in my life that says that, immediately gone. But I
Yeah.
think there can be a lot of, especially if you're just getting into fitness, you're just getting in the gym and you're like, I know I want to get stronger. And even if it's for this like toned look, right? You're getting around more people that could potentially skew you in the way of where they think is like best quote unquote male gaze. So how do you know, like as somebody that is new, to not listen to people like that when you're kind of starting off in your journey?
I think it depends. I think it depends on what your priorities are. I'm not going to be super reductionistic, but like to me, like my cardiac health and like my bone and joint health and my ability to like get up off the ground when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old is more important to me than like what some guy thinks about my body. And I encourage people to just like zoom out and think about what their priorities are and think about what they want in the long term because especially with your body, like the most important thing about it is how it looks until maybe it doesn't work in the way that you want it to. And then that becomes not important at all. Right. So, really kind of zooming out and being like, okay, A, this is for more than aesthetic. And B, like letting someone tell you what to do with your body because of the way they want it to look is a crazy thing conceptually to me. And that's not something I really allow like from partners or friends or anything like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and maybe you can relate to this too. I feel like a lot of women want to change the way people go to the gym for aesthetics, right? They want to look
absolutely.
good so that they feel good, right? And there comes a point where, like we've mentioned, we've been in this for a long time. The aesthetics thing goes way out the window, and you feel stronger, you feel more mobile, you have more confidence. You all these benefits happen, but to get there, I think for most people, it is this like physical or aesthetics kind of thing. So what could we, help women see how much the benefits are more important than the aesthetics in the early stages?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to recap with my clients, and I always like to, even 4 weeks in, 8 weeks in, because, for a lot of people who just want a body recomp, right? We're not going to lose 20 pounds in a month, right? The first month, 2, 3, like it's a grind, right? Because the scale's not really, going anywhere. Like you feel like you're working really hard. You don't know if you're seeing progress because you see yourself every day, right? So it's a really hard time to like stay consistent with things. So I always talk to my clients in those moments about other things that they're experiencing, right? I'm like, how's your energy? Like how's your, you know, how's your body image? How are you feeling about yourself? How are your clothes fitting? How much stronger have you gotten? And the thing that I always talk about is like, if you focus on the way that you feel and the way that you perform, the way that you look is going to be like such an incredible side effect of that. But if you put the cart before the horse and you're like, I want to look a certain way, and you make you know, every decision is informed by the way that you think you look, because let's face it, especially like with women and, I don't want to get too like stereotypical, but like the month is a roller coaster. And like some days I'm like, I look like a rat, and some days I'm like, wow, I look great. And so it's like if I based my training decisions or my fueling decisions off of how I felt about my body day to day, I wouldn't get anywhere. So then we look at the end of, 6 months or something, and my clients, they look different. They've recomped, but all of them, like I had a woman tell me about a month ago that she's like, my job, she's like, I'm so much better at my job. And she's like, and it's because I have a routine. I feel good about myself. I show up differently. Like she's like, my relationship is better because I don't feel like shit about myself. And so those are the things where like I want to bring it to the women who only care about the way that they look and just like shake them. And I'm like, if you just stop thinking about how you look for 12 weeks, A, you are going to look different, but every other area in your life is going to improve. Does that make sense? Like just kind of flipping those roles and being like, focus on everything else, get excited about that, and then you're going to look some type of way.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on all of this. And it's like so hard to see it in the interim, right? Like people are like 12 weeks, 6 months, like, God, that's where we can go back to like being uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to show up week after week and you not seeing visible results and you being like, is this even working? What's even happening? But like going back to how you're saying about relationships and work and like how you show up for yourself, all of those things add up so much more than the body recomp. But yeah, in 6 months, you're like, oh, actually, like my body and how I look and is actually different too. But it is hard to
100%.
get there, right? It's tough. And I think that the mindset of society and like what decades of being a millennial, like we're
Yeah.
told to be smaller. So it's like, how do we continuously check in with our mindset during this 6 month process of like mind and body connection?
Yeah, and I mean it's like we've said a couple times, we've been doing this for so long, and to
Yeah.
pretend like I'm enjoying every single moment of it and phase that I'm in would be crazy, right? And so I think that a lot of coaches do a really poor job of I think coaches are concerned about the result a little bit too much and not necessarily about the person and their ability to maintain longevity with the habit, right? You don't need to look different at the end of your 6 months with me, but if you keep doing the stuff that we talked about, you'll look different 2 years down the road, right? So it's more of just like being transparent with your clients. Like I even tell them, I say, I'd be lying to you if I said I've trained for any 6 month period 3 times a week for 6 months. Like I can't remember the last time I was able to do that. Right. And so not having these unrealistic expectations on your clients for the name of the result, but then B, I think there's so much value in being transparent and being like, this is my job and I love it more than anything. But holy shit, there are some weeks that I just won't go to the gym because I don't want to be there and I don't want to work out. And like, you're going to feel like that. And that is okay. Like, you don't have to love every ounce of this process. Right. Um, and I think coaches kind of sacrifice that for, being like, you need to be committed, you need to do this, which like I get, but life is life and it will always life. And you know what I mean? Like it's so unrealistic to put those expectations on your client and for them to have those expectations of themselves because then you get into this thing where they feel like they're failing all the time and it's just unrealistic.
Yeah, yeah. So we go into like the woman that's like new, right? Let's call it like more beginner, maybe intermediate. She's like kind of worked out in the past. And I know kind of what you're going to say with this, but gym intimidation is real, especially when it's like a school of men basically and the weight section's scary and maybe they've gone on treadmills and stuff. How do you help women like get past that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm lucky in that my personality is, I would say, like out there enough, brash enough. So a lot of the clients that I get are not the super timid type, right? Which I love. I love like a girl that's like, I've never lifted a dumbbell before, but like I'm just whatever, I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna do it wrong and it doesn't matter and I'm gonna figure it out, right? But for a lot of, you know, women that are intimidated, I don't know where we got the idea or anybody got the idea that fitness is inherently masculine, and it's not. And there is no a and I'm sure you can agree with this. Half of the time I see guys working out in the gym, I'm judging them because of the dumb shit they're doing.
Yeah.
Like so many men do the dumbest stuff in the gym. So like you following a program written by somebody who actually knows what they're doing, I promise you're going to be the only one in there that looks like they know what they're doing, right? And also it's just like the you have to get comfortable with it's definitely a hurdle, but you have to get comfortable with taking up that space. And that's something I repeat to my clients all the time is like the gym is not a masculine place. There's a lot of men there, but like it's not designed for them, it's not built for them, it's not about them. Like it's about anybody who like wants to be healthier. So take the lens off of that, and the understanding that like most people in commercial gyms don't know what they're doing, and like that's okay, right? Like we're all just in there like trying to do the best that we can do. And sometimes when I'm in the gym, again, I'm sure you can relate, I'm doing stupid stuff, I'm like playing around with something, people are probably looking at me like that girl's an idiot, not knowing that like I'm a literal strength and conditioning coach. But
Yeah.
it's like no one's paying attention, and it's not, the space was not designed for men. So I just I encourage women to like put the guard down a little bit, go in, try it out, because most of the time, like I've never had a client have like a negative experience. It's all been something that they've created in their head, like some situation. And on top of that, like I find a lot of gyms to be like really supportive, especially if you go to a smaller gym or, even if you're at like a big box gym, like one of the, 6-year-old guys that's there like twice a day will come up to you and be like, hey, you're like holding this wrong. And so just like assume the best, and the chance of you like having a negative interaction or of somebody even noticing you or what you're doing is so low, right?
Yeah. 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 No, I totally agree. And those are really great, valid points is like, who actually said that this is like a male dominated area? Like who
Yeah,
made that up? Probably the man. So I
probably.
want to talk about, so you're super knowledgeable. You've got kinesiology degree and you're also CSCS certified. So, and you talked about strength and conditioning. What does that mean? Like for someone that has like never heard of like a strength and conditioning coach, why is that different than like a personal trainer?
I mean, I think it's exactly kind of what we have been talking about, right? It's more of that um full full scope of health and wellness and performance. And I mean, obviously, I have a CPT as well. I have a few specializations under NASM and things like that, and so much of that is focused on the weight loss component, the aesthetic component, some of these concepts that are geared a little bit more towards um general fitness, and something that you might like general concepts and the base level of knowledge that you need to train and exercise. And I think that where strength and conditioning comes in is I'm concerned about the function of your body. I'm concerned about training my client evenly. I'm concerned about imbalances that I see. I'm concerned about, maybe corrective things that we can do and put within the programming. It's much more of a puzzle than personal training. I think a lot of personal training is working out, and I think a lot of strength and conditioning is training. And I hope that kind of makes sense. But I think that personal training certifications taught me, when I got them early in my career, to like build a workout maybe, but I didn't understand a lot of the deeper conceptual pieces of training until, I began to really explore strength and conditioning.
What is the difference between just like workouts and training or exercising and training?
Yeah, I love this question. Exercising is what I would call like a micro view of the situation. And I was just, talking about this with somebody else. It's the what am I doing in this day, right? It's often the kind of like, I will say like group fitness is exercising, right? And I want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with exercising. I encourage everybody to exercise. But it's a micro approach in that what you do in that day stays there, right? So you burn the calories, you feel good, maybe you're a little sore the next day. Like that is exercising, that is working out. Training is understanding your end goal and reverse engineering what you need to do to get there, and having a comprehensive view and a comprehensive program of that. So that's where progression comes in. That's where, different programming concepts come in. That's where, progression of movement difficulty and different variables and, unilateral versus bilateral and different implements and all of these things come in to kind of make this cohesive plan that's designed as a roadmap to get you from point A to point B. So what I experience a lot, and I'm sure you do too, is people come to me because they're working out a lot, right? But they're not training, right? And training involves strategy. And so a lot of what I talk about with like strength and conditioning and the difference between that and personal training is that strategy piece and the ability of, you or I to put together that roadmap, put together that puzzle for somebody who, may be putting a lot of effort into exercising, but is really kind of discouraged and disappointed because they're not kind of seeing the fruits of their labor.
Yeah, that's such a great way to put it too. And I love the way you talked about the different levels of progression. I think a lot of people hear the words progressive overload and maybe still just don't totally understand it. So if we could like break that down in just like a very simple real world way, like how would you explain that?
Just progression in general or progressive overload?
progressive overload?
Honestly, just doing like you want to look at if your training was a graph, a line graph, like you want a positive slope. You want that line to be going up, right? So, and there's no, I think people get intimidated by this, and there's it's really difficult to like mess it up, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a ton of strategy that goes into it from a programming level that you or I would do, but it's like, are you lifting? It could be you're lifting more weight on a given exercise. It could be you're doing more reps. It could be you couldn't do that exercise on one leg before and now you can. It could be that you did that exercise on one leg and now you're adding another component to it. It could be going from a barbell, to a dumbbell movement for a little less, stability and a little more like unilateral movement. There's all of these things that you can do to make your training more difficult. But the key to it is, and I say this all the time, is just measuring your variables. Like if you're not writing your workouts down, if you don't know what you're doing, like you're not implementing progressive overload, because you would be lying if you told me you knew exactly how many reps and sets and weight you did for every exercise that you did in the past, month. So it really is just that strategy piece to make sure that you're on the upward trajectory of like, okay, I am continuously challenging my body.
And there's, like you mentioned, so many ways to do it, right? But most people think it's like, I'm just lifting heavier week over week. But we both know being in this for as long as we have been, it's like, well, you only get to a certain point. And then I think a lot of people plateau, and that's where, working with a coach and getting that strategy is so important to get you kind of over that hump. But if you're like in the more beginning stages, I would say like how often do you know like how much I should be upping my weight or upping my reps or upping my sets? Like what would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think that's the knowledge block as much as, especially when it comes to women, I think there's a misconception for like how hard they should be working and like what is challenging, right? Like sometimes I'll have an in-person client that I'll start working with and they're like, "Oh my God, that was hard." And I'm like, "No, it wasn't." Like I'm standing right here. Like, no, it wasn't. I like, has anything difficult ever happened in your life? Like that wasn't hard. And so, just kind of reframing like what it means to lift near failure, to lift, in a meaningful way, to train in a meaningful way. And then, there's no rules and regulations to like how much you're going to go up in weight, how much, when you're going to go down in reps, these things like that. The, your physiological strength is a aggregate of thousands of different variables. So it's like, yeah, one day you might have to take 5 pounds off the bar, and like that's just what it is. It doesn't mean you're getting weaker. One day you might do the weight that you did last week for 6 reps and you might hit 12 reps. Like these things just happen. But you want to zoom out and over time know that you're lifting more weight over time. So I would say, if you're doing single arm dumbbell rows with a 30-pound dumbbell, and in 6 months you're still doing them with a 30-pound dumbbell, like something in your training is broken, right? Um, so for the beginner and intermediate, which I wish I could go back to that time where I was just getting stronger all the time. That sounds so much fun. Just be honest with yourself about what's challenging you and how challenged you are. And if your set is not difficult, then add another one because that was a waste of time. So
Oh my gosh, when you were talking about the client that said this is hard,
yeah.
I have so many memories of that because truly, I think, especially when someone is new or intermediate, they say it's hard, but like, how do you even get them to feel hard? Like, how do you get them to that point? Or like, what could we like maybe have an analogy for to like get them there?
I have no idea, but I think something that I do that I've done with a lot of my clients is like my client will be like, "Oh my God, like that was so hard." And like they'll be like shoulder pressing tens or something, right? And they're like, "That was so hard." And I'm like, "Okay, put the weights back up there." And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Gun to your head, could you do 15 more?" And they're like, "Well, yeah." And I'm like, "Okay, so what?" Like, no, it wasn't hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we can't have 15 reps in the tank at the end of a set. That's crazy work. So, just kind of like putting it into perspective. And I think some of that comes through practice. Like the metaphor of like building a muscle, like learning how to train is also building a muscle, like building the muscle of being okay with discomfort, of being okay with like shaking during a rep, of having your first client like, you know, almost drop a dumbbell because like something was challenging. Like those are all things that people need to be exposed to like understand how training at a proper difficulty, you know, what it really looks like. But I think, you know, a lot of it is just more kind of how we talked about earlier, perpetuated by like the narrative that like women are just like in the gym and like doing stuff and lifting things and like looking cute, you know, and it's just like that's not the reality if you want to tone. You know, like you have to lift at an intensity that actually makes sense for your goal. So
Yes, gosh, that's so nice to hear too. And I think it really is just like this trial and error. I always like to say like your face shows it all. So if like really if you're watching a video back and like you're just easily doing it, like no, that's not there. Do you use RPE or like percentage based training? And can you explain that a little bit?
yeah, I use RPE with like all Gen Pop clients, and then I'll use like percentage based training with a lot of my athletes, just because having those like discrete measurables is really great in terms of like determining readiness and understanding like how they're fueling and things like that. Um, but with RPE, I kind of use like the reps in reserve theory a little bit with my clients. And, you know, kind of how I joked about earlier with the 15 more reps, like that's how I'll kind of instill that concept in them. So we'll talk about, you know, I'll ask them. And I think, again, it's like building a muscle. You have to practice it. I'll ask them and they're like, oh, that was like a 9. And I'm like, no, but you know, how many more reps could you do? And they're like, oh, like 6. And I'm like, okay, so it was like a 5 or a 4, right? And so it's just kind of like getting them accustomed to that and then them actually learning what RPE is. And it's cool to kind of watch it evolve over time because like I have, you know, female clients that weren't used to lifting heavier than 10 pounds. And then like during a workout, like they might actually be at an RPE 9. And it's like, that's exciting. And then they're like, that was a 9. And I'm like, yes, it was. Like, you almost died. Good job, you know? So just kind of like building that muscle of like, what does it feel like to lift at a proper intensity? And I think RPE is a great way to do that, but you have to set the expectation, right? You can't just be like, what was the RPE? And then they're like 6. And then you just take it at face value. Like and you develop it through reps and through being a coach, but like you have to be an accurate judge of that.
I think also that's why personally for me, I love videos and form. It's really great as a coach, but also for someone to watch back and I will literally ask them, be like, what do you think that looks like? Because in the moment they might feel like a 9 and they look it back and they're like, oh, actually, yeah, you're right. That didn't look that hard. But I think a big piece of this too is that people are actually afraid to fail. They're afraid to hurt themselves. And what could you tell clients that, they don't want to lift too heavy because of that factor?
Yeah, I think that, you know, obviously some of it comes down to the trainer responsibility of making sure that clients are well educated on form and that, you know, they're lifting properly. Um, I think that it's so, and I'm sure, you know, you would agree, like weightlifting and lifting injuries are like so few and far between. And the times that I've seen that it has happened, it's been either just like straight up individual stupidity or like negligence by a coach and just not. Um, so I think there's so much room in between not training at a proper intensity and like actually hurting yourself. But something that I'll do with clients who maybe are afraid of like free weights because they think like they're going to get hurt or they're going to drop it or whatever, like, you know, we'll do a chest press machine and then they'll get up to 50 pounds. And I'm like, okay, so you can definitely bench 10 less pounds than that. You can definitely dumbbell bench with, you know, 20 pounds. And then they'll try it and they'll get kind of less intimidated. And it's all about kind of building that muscle and then realizing like there are so many lifting situations where it's like, if something is happening, like drop the weight on the ground. Like
Hmm.
that's the worst thing that's going to happen. And also, I mean, I'm not huge with barbell and big movements with my Gen Pop clients, just because I think there's other ways that you can do things and it requires a little bit higher technical proficiency for the movement to actually be effective. So for me, like I'm just really big on, getting like dumbbell form down and working on that. And um, I don't know. I think that injury in terms of weightlifting is something that we see so seldom that I really don't think about it a lot because it's hard to do. So
I totally agree. I totally agree with that. And for the most part, like think of the last, injuries that you've heard from the last 20 people. It's usually you doing something totally outside of the actual gym. And what we're doing in the gym prepares you to not get injured
to
outside the
handle that.
gym, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The other thing I like to do, because I do some barbell work with my clients, is actually have them practice fails just at a lower weight. So like if they're doing a barbell back squat, it's like, okay, strip the bar and just fail. Just see what it
Yeah.
feels like to drop it on the safety bars if you have them, just so that you know what it's going to actually feel like if you do get stuck at the bottom. But typically we don't even get that heavy enough to get them to that side of things too.
Yeah, exactly. It's like failing. I mean, we just talked about it. Like there's just so much room between like what
Of
most
course.
clients are doing and like
Yeah.
getting trapped underneath a barbell that I'm like, I think we're going to be okay for the foreseeable future. And like if you start, lifting heavyweight, like then we can, kind of talk about what that looks like. But there's so little risk.
What do you feel like most women miss in their programming? Like what's like very underrated when it comes to programming or exercise?
That's a great question. Um, I don't know if it's something that women miss, but I think, no, actually, I think women get this wrong. I think they miss the fact that like our body is a machine, right? And it works like it has very specific ways, for how it operates. And when you address parts of a machine more than you address other parts, or when you don't take in, like the whole, well, I'm just like doing glutes 4 days a week, or, things like that, like you cannot pick and choose what parts of your body you're going to take care of and pay attention to, right? And so I think a lot of people miss the fact that like you can focus on one area, but like how I got big glutes is I got strong enough to hold 50 pounds in my hand while I was lunging. You know what I mean? I didn't get there by doing kickbacks every single day for 2 years. So it's like, I wish more women understood that like building everything from the ground up is going to get you like a great result. And there are so few women that I know that spend years working out and they, have like a tiny waist and like big glutes. And then they're like, oh, but like my shoulders, I don't like my shoulders. They're too big. You know what I mean? It's just like you're worried about something that's not happening, like that's not even going to happen. And so I think women miss the opportunity to like train in a more comprehensive way because, like we talked about before, they're basing all of their training decisions on a desired aesthetic. And a
Yeah.
lot of times it's like you don't even know how to get there. Like you will, like, if you get stronger, like you're going to get bigger glutes. Like you're going to get bigger glutes, a lot quicker if you're, doing full body 3 times a week with relevant weight than if you're doing glutes 5 times a week, like body weight hip thrusting. You know what I mean? Like it's just they're missing conceptually like the most effective way to do things.
I think then that goes back to getting injured because then we're talking about volume or overtraining that specific
Yes.
area because we're missing out on all the things you talked about earlier, like unilateral, like mobility, all planes of motion, like making sure that we're adding all that in the programming too, because we're so focused on this one thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And also, like, I also tell this to clients. I'm like, well, you can't actually train your glutes if you're too injured to train at all. So, like, let's also think about that. And I don't think people think about that until it happens to them. But I'm like, if you get hurt and you can't go to the gym, yeah, you're absolutely not going to like your aesthetic. So
Truth. Yeah.
yeah.
No one's gonna like their aesthetic when you can't actually train anymore.
Correct.
Earlier you were talking about fueling for performance. So I'd love to just
Mhm.
kind of chat about like what's your rule of thumb when it comes to fueling for performance, strength. We can even also throw in aesthetics in that too, but just like what is your rule of thumb look like there?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few really simple philosophies when it comes to nutrition. And obviously, a lot of these were compiled through working with, a lot of dietitians in my athletics
Mhm.
career, because before then, fueling was purely a function of aesthetic because I was, in the personal training world. And um, realistically, like fueling for performance for me is just the understanding that the most impactful thing that you can do is have enough energy to get to the gym and then have enough energy to perform well while you're in the gym. Like those are the things that are going to have the most impact on, the way that you perform and also the way that you look. So when people say to me, well, eating breakfast like doesn't seem that important. And I'm like, well, it is if you don't feel like shit at 3 p.m. and then you don't have that moment at, 3 where you're like, well, I'm just going to skip the gym today and I'm not going to go. Um, it is important when you zoom out and you look at, okay, eating breakfast actually makes me feel better throughout the day. And then I'm able to get to the gym. Um, the thing that matters is performing well while you're at the gym. If you, eat carbs before the gym and you can lift 5 pounds heavier across all of your exercises, like think about how much volume that is. Think about how much more effective that is. And it really is getting away from the idea that, food and exercise are on opposite sides of the equation, which is something that we've been taught for so long. Like these two things counteract each other. Um, Versus like these things are both on the same side of the equation and like we can use them to benefit one another. So, my whole strategy and view on that is just like getting clients to understand how impactful it is when, they're fueling to perform, but also getting clients to understand that the way that they're fueling, even though they think it's for their goals, is like not effective whatsoever. And so really just kind of breaking down the idea that like food and exercise are, continuously in competition with one another.
Yeah. For the most part, I mean, everyone is very different, right? That's why you work with a coach and have a very customized kind of journey. But what do you feel like most women are missing out on when it comes to nutrition? Is it just not eating enough or not eating the right foods to make sure they're fueling and not hitting those energy
I
slaps?
And I don't know if it's one specific thing, but almost every behavior that I see over and over again is rooted in some sort of diet culture belief. So,
Right.
we're not eating breakfast, which for a lot of clients, like that's a huge one. And they're like, "Oh, I'm just not a breakfast person." And I'm like, "Well, I don't care. That's not any of my business. Like you need to eat
Yeah.
breakfast." And so that's a big one, but women aren't doing it because A, they're scared of like total caloric intake, or they wake up and they're like, well, I'm not hungry. So like I must need to burn more fat, whatever, goes through the mind on that. Or, they're not front loading their day at all. So like they're eating a ton at dinner and then snacking after dinner because, they've all of their expenditure has happened before 3 p.m., right? But they've only had 400 calories by that point in the day. And then also not eating before the gym is a really common one that I think they notice has an immediate impact on performance. And it's just like, wow, I can actually like, I don't feel dizzy while I'm working out. And I'm like, yes, that's the point. And just like rewiring some of the stuff. Like I know a lot of women who are like, oh, I just like love having like sweets or I love having, like a cookie. And I'm like, great, eat it before the gym. Like you can still have that. You know what I mean? And not like just like reconfiguring the puzzle to because most people don't eat as poorly as they think they do, but it's just like a couple shifts that can have such a big impact on like the way they feel throughout the day and then their ability to perform.
Yeah. Yeah. In your bio and in mine as well, we have take up space. What does that look like outside the gym? Or like how can you describe that to the women listening?
Yeah, I think for me it has a really deep meaning because I not only is strength and conditioning something that's really, male dominated, but, working in strength and conditioning at the athletic level and collegiate and things like that. And then, as we talked about earlier, just men inherently feeling like fitness is theirs and health is theirs, and like that they're automatically an authority figure when it comes to this because they are a man. And it really is just about being, confident in your ability as a woman to exercise, to, especially in what I do, to be confident in this industry, to put your opinions online. To There was so long that I didn't, share what I thought, because I didn't feel like I was qualified to do so. And it's like, you and I have more letters after our name than half the guys talking about this stuff on the internet anyways. And so it just really is like being confident in this space that has been traditionally like reserved for men, whether that's on the performance side or the coaching side. And, hopefully by doing that, kind of helping more women like get comfortable in the gym. And I think, we have seen a shift in both the gym and in strength and conditioning in the past like 10 or so years. And like, that's something that really excites me.
When you picture women like specifically in this that embody that, what qualities do you feel like she has? Not just like physique wise, but just like what's her behavior and personality?
Yeah, I mean, I just think like unapologetic, some of the stuff that we talked about earlier, like it will be a cold day in hell before I let a man tell me like how I'm supposed to look, how I'm supposed to train.
Yeah.
Guys always think they're slick. Like I'm sure you get it. Like guys come up to you in the gym and like tell you how to do something different. And I'm like, great, perfect. Yeah, you definitely know what you're talking about. But it's just like, I envision it as just someone who is like unapologetically themselves, and just really steadfast in their beliefs, and how you are, how I am in this industry, like really just the confidence. And it's not an aesthetic thing so much like that. You can look any type of way and be a coach. You can look any type of way and be an athlete. Like that has nothing to do with it for me. It's really just like, being unapologetic about the space that you want to take up and just claiming it as yours.
So if someone listening is like, God, I want that. I want to take up space. I want to be unapologetically me. And I want to slap a man in the face when he tells me to do something that I already know how
Love
to
that.
do. What is your message to her?
And it's something that I've had to start doing, but just like act in accordance with like the person that you want to be. Like, that person that you like think about when you're like in the shower and you're like, I can't believe that happened. I should have said that. Like, say it. You know what I mean? Like, be the person who you want to be. Like, show up as that person. And that can mean so many different things for so many different people. Like, if you want to be the girl that wears like really cute matching workout sets to the gym, like, buy really cute matching workout set, like put your hair up, put some makeup on, go to the gym, like be whoever you want to be within that space. Like,
Hmm.
whatever you're envisioning for your 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road, like start showing up as that person. Right.
Yeah.
And we mentioned it with like women getting into the gym, like girls are like, well, I'm not really like a gym girl. And I'm like, then decide to be one today.
Yeah.
Like just go and be a gym girl. And look, now you are, right? Like reality is just our perception of the situation. So just like be it. And that's been powerful for me. And so I hope it is for a lot of other women too.
Yes, that's so important to just like basically talk as if you are that person. You embody this so much on your page. And I'm sure all the listeners will agree with this, but you're right. Like you are what you say to yourself. So if you say you're a millionaire and this strong, badass woman that takes up space, show up as one and start.
Exactly. 100%.
Jess, thank you so much for being here today. I so appreciate your time and your knowledge, and it's been really fun to chat with you today.
Thank you. I had so much fun. This was great.
Where can people find you and chat with you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. I'm on everything, but Instagram is just like where I live. It's my
Yeah.
safe little corner of the internet. So that's at Coach J Burke, Burke. And I encourage people to follow, to connect, to shoot me a message. I love just kind of chatting with anyone and everyone. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
You also have a podcast though, right?
I do. I do.
Promote that, girl.
I'm like, I listen, I'm doing so much like in the gym,
Yeah.
I have a podcast. It's called the Strength Chick Podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple, wherever you find podcasts. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you. And thanks for being on Broads.
Thank you so much.